Thanks everyone for joining us. It's Wednesday night. This is our how-to series, and tonight we're talking about how to travel with your family. So welcome Cindy, welcome Mandy. Thanks for joining. And
Yeah, I'm excited about this topic. I think everybody knows us, but let's let Mandy introduce herself just for a
yeah,
brief minute. Mandy, tell our listeners who you are.
Sure. I am kind of a sidekick or co-partner to my husband. We both run two different companies that are travel related. The first one, we help families travel affordably, looking for ways to actually get those bucket list trips checked off and, showing our kids the world. So we use a lot of kind of off the beaten path ways to save money, but any way that we can so that we can get out there with our kids. And then we also have a subscription box that we deliver to couples who love to travel like we do and just explore the world in extra ways, but just doing it at home. So lots of travel surrounds our lives every day.
love
Yeah.
it. Yeah, that's great.
And you're going to talk to us a little. We're going to talk a little bit about family travel, what it means to take your family, both your children, your parents, your aunt and uncles. So let's maybe just chat a little bit about what we mean by that, because family travel doesn't just mean you and your little ones. It can mean lots of things, right? I mean, April,
Yeah.
do you go with your dad and your sister,
Yeah,
right?
I go with my dad, my sister. I did a bus tour one year with like extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles. So yeah, it's a lot of things.
Yeah, it can mean that. And Mandy, you do all that too, right? You have little
Yep.
ones and take your parents.
Yep, extended trips. I have been traveling with my grandparents since I was, as little as I can remember. I've been all over with him as well. So lots of fun to be had with whoever wants to go, really.
Right. There's lots of different dynamics, right? You could be taking a multi-generational trip, right, April? You can be taking your
Right.
parents with your kids, or you might just want, I know my daughter and I've taken some mother-daughter tours and trips, and I've done that with my mom, the other way around, mother and daughter things. And so there's just different ways to family travel. But it means kind of the same thing, because no matter what you're doing, you have family, which is a blessing and a challenge at the same time, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I think we want to share just a few tips. And one of the big things when we're doing that is to talk about the why. Um,
Yeah,
and
I definitely think you should
yes,
think about why you're taking the trip. If you're wanting to spend time just with a parent, like I know for myself, after my mom passed away, my dad and I wanted to spend a lot of quality time together. So we made plans to just take some trips, the two of us, since we hadn't had that time together. And I know, Cindy, you've taken trips with just your son or daughter, you
right.
mentioned.
Yeah. And I think you have to define what it is you're trying to do. And then sometimes understanding the why will give you the who, right? Which also means who you're bringing and who you're excluding, right? Mandy, I'm sure you do this too, right?
Yeah. I think the intentionality is a big word when we're planning any kind of a trip. In fact, I'm a huge spreadsheet nerd, and at the top of my spreadsheet it says, "Why are we doing this?" And so
Right.
it
Yeah.
helps us when we're planning everything, every element of the trip. It helps us to be able to weed out the things that don't make sense or that aren't really a priority for the goal and that purpose of that trip.
Exactly. I mean, once you kind of have your intention, then lots of things come together, right? Like who you're including and excluding, because sometimes you have to say no.
Right.
You can't come because it's not that kind of trip. My mom likes to come on every trip I take. So I sometimes have to tell her, no, that's not this time, because that's not the purpose of this trip. And other times it's fine. It just depends on what right? What you're trying
Yeah,
to
what the
do.
goal of the trip is or why you're taking it, what the purpose is, if it's, the who and the why kind of tie together oftentimes.
Yeah. And I think once you understand that, setting those boundaries, like protecting that, be very, mother hen, if you will, around it. Like, this is my why. We're not going to let other things happen to it because it will, deviate from the plan.
Yeah, we've taken solo trips. Just my husband will take one child and I'll take a
Yes.
different child, and we'll do solo trips like that. And what that does when we set those boundaries around those trips is it means that the people who are left out, so to speak, that they don't necessarily feel left out because they understand there's a purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
And it means that they're not, they're not sitting at home thinking, wow, this is sad, I'm not there. They're more excited for you in that trip as well.
Right,
Yeah, oh,
right.
that's a big part of it. The communication to the people that maybe you didn't select to go with you, like explaining the why and maybe why this particular trip is so important to the people that are going.
Right.
And then, making plans another time with those other individuals.
Right, if they really want to go. That's how I ended up going to Paris twice in once in 2 years in a row. As I took my daughter, and then my mom had wanted to go with a mother-daughter trip, and I was like, well, we'll have to do our own mother-daughter trip, so we did it the next year. So but in order to preserve the why, you can't invade that. And so I do think making sure you understand it and kind of put those walls up around it so that you have a good trip. Yeah, and that includes things like spouses, and I mean sometimes you're doing it, you're taking you and your husband are going on a trip, or maybe you're not, right, April?
Right, yeah, exactly. Oftentimes, yeah, if Jeff, my husband, understands why he's not included in this trip, then he's like, oh, okay, I get it. My dad and I do a lot of photography trips together, and that's not really his thing. So then it's kind of like, oh, I get this. I understand, kind of makes
You can say no to
right.
that, yeah. or to another child, as you said, Mandy. Like there's all of those kinds of things. And then once you get that figured out, we're doing planning, right? So planning together, I don't know about you, Mandy, but April and I experienced this where they think because we do travel for a living and that's what you like to, like, you'll just plan the whole thing.
Right, exactly. You get to pick all the hotels and all the activities, and they just kind of put it on you. But it's important to like have everyone involved
Yes.
in some planning. I'm working on a trip right now, or have been, where it's going to be my dad, my sister, my niece. So again, multi-generational, and it's kind of assigning them like, no, you guys are going to decide what we're doing on this day, or here's some
Yeah.
choices on where we're going to stay. You pick it. I gave you some choices. Here's my reasons for picking these. Now you have to make a decision.
Yeah, and I think some people's personalities may gravitate towards just planning the whole thing. Like, I'm
Right.
just this way, just let me plan it. It's fine. I'll plan a good trip. And that's fine, but you miss out on so many opportunities to hear to get the input from everybody else, and also to get the buy-in. And
Buy-in, yeah.
Yeah.
and that's a huge part. If people aren't bought into the plan, and then they show up and they're frustrated with the choices that you made,
right,
and things don't go so well. So yeah, it's huge to let everybody have their own piece in it.
Yeah, you kind of have to make everybody do it, because some people don't like to plan. But I agree with you, Mandy, that it's important to kind of make them get invested, because if it's all on you, then everything that goes wrong on the trip is all your fault. You chose it all. I mean, because sometimes it's not your fault that the restaurant, is closed now, or their website wasn't up to date and you didn't know the hours or whatever. But still, because you were the one planning, everyone's going to look at you and go, well, why didn't you know? But if you give some of that, share that, you don't have to own all the risk and all of that.
Yeah, exactly. That
It's
is
really
definitely true.
Yeah,
And
we do
then
that with our
they're
kids a
more-
lot.
Yeah.
We give them so much input in everything that we do, that in some cases we have to rein them in a little bit. Like, we can't possibly do all of those things in this trip, so let's kind of narrow it down. But
yeah.
But then they're excited. I know when I was a kid too, it's like we took the family trip, and it's like if you were assigned something or you had some choice in something you were more excited. Then it wasn't, because otherwise it's easy to be like, complain, why are we doing this?
And I cannot remember the woman's name who did the road trip with her kids in the van, but she went as far as like telling one of the kids, like, you have the playlist, like it's for the car. And like, this is amazing stuff that you can give your children, little ones, to do. And, and even older ones, you can share some of the responsibility of what to do. All along the trip, so it doesn't all fall on you. And they're like, I'm in charge on this trip for the music that we listen to. It's like, oh, great. But somebody has to be in charge of it. So, we'll see what happens. Yeah, that's the planning part is really important, that you kind of spread the love. And with my kids when they were little, they can't get online and research things, but I would still give them choices, right? Show them these two options. What do you want to do, this one or that one? And I had a story I was sharing with April about going to San Diego. I too to one-on-one trips with my kids when they were little. And so I let them pick, and my daughter and I were in San Diego, and I had let her pick the hotel. So I went online and picked 3 or 4 hotels in the neighborhood that I wanted to stay and showed her pictures of them. Like, this one, which one do you want to stay at? Well, she picked the one with the rainbow flag because she wanted to stay at the Rainbow Hotel. Fantastic. So we stay at the Rainbow Hotel. And the story goes that we left for the day, and we come back at the end of the day, and we're in a little older hotel. So there's one elevator, and there's this line, huge long line at the elevator. And I'm like, what is going on? Why, there was a restaurant at the top, and apparently there was some sort of nightclub happening. And so I asked the front desk, and he's like, no, it's the only elevator you have. You just have to wait in line. So we're standing hum in the line with my little toddler. She couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old daughter. And of course, because there's a rainbow flag, it's a gay friendly hotel, and it's a gay nightclub at night. So I'm in a line with all men, and it didn't all click right away because we had a great day, and all of a sudden it clicks. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, now I know what's happening. Then the YMCA song comes on in the lobby. And my daughter is like, Mom, I know this song. And she steps out of line and she starts doing the whole thing. And I'm so embarrassed. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And they were so sweet. They all stepped out of line and did it with her. They laughed at, and I would never have had that experience had I not let her pick. I probably would have picked a different hotel.
Right.
She picked the hotel, and I get to tell this story for the rest of my life. About the Rainbow Hotel. And this is the kind of things that you get with family travel when you let other people help you.
Right, exactly.
Help you travel. There's all kinds of stuff like that. Do you let your kids pick too, right, Mandi?
Yeah. Well, and something that we learned is that when they get to choose aspects of elements of the trip, they actually feel like you're listening to them. They feel like they're heard, and sometimes as parents we forget that our kids have opinions, or that they're that they have brains and minds of their own, and they can make good decisions, and we guide them along the way. But I think that's something people forget often, that your kids are capable of doing things and making choices. And so for us, our kids love that because they feel like, you respect me enough to give me a voice in this big thing that we're doing. And in fact, it's how we plan most of our trips now. We never surprise them with a destination unless it's something that we've already been talking about ahead of time. In fact, we have a destination that we just booked recently, and they don't know. We've had the tickets for a couple of weeks, but we are planning a way that we can reveal it to them. But it's somewhere that they really, really want to know, that they've wanted to go to. So,
see.
But we learned our lesson too by not involving them. One trip we actually planned to go to San Diego, and they were pretty little. We thought, let's go to Legoland, let's do a couple of fun things around San Diego, but we didn't tell them that's where we were headed. And so we drove a couple of days to get there, and we show up and they're like, oh, cool, thanks. Like, just nothing.
Oh no.
And my mom planning this is like, are you kidding me?
Right.
We've been doing this for weeks. My husband and I have been planning this to like the nth degree, and they're just like, cool.
Yeah. I mean,
I know. But that's a great story, Mandi, and it points out and illustrates for others with different ages that how important it is to get them involved ahead of time, because I think it does build that excitement. They feel vested that they're part of the process. And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I really think that you have to include them in that, and they'll want to go because they picked it, right? Yeah. And sometimes you can't give them the whole world to choose from, right? You give them a couple of choices, but if they get to choose. And I also was surprised when we planned family trips, because they watched you plan, when I gave a choice to one of my kids, they would be trying to think about what the other one wanted. It's like, well, we'll go here because so-and-so likes this. It's like, oh, this is lovely that this is happening, or mom likes this. Everybody will enjoy this. So, they learn by example, and you're teaching them all of those things at the same time. So much great stuff with that kind of travel. And also when you're traveling with older people, when I was traveling with my mom and my brother, you got to include them too, right? They can't sit back and let you plan the whole thing, although they want to.
Right.
Yeah.
It's super important to find, let them pick something or ask them ahead of time if you have like a list of choices, hey, I'm looking at, there's these things we can do for this half a day, what kinds of things appeal to you? Because, sometimes with an older parent too, they may have been to these places. So they're going to kind of like zone out and not be as interested. But if you say, hey, I found these things to do, maybe something pops up. Like with my dad, all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I didn't really get to see much of that the last time, and I'd really like to go back. Or, they've got this new exhibit. Can we do that? And then you can just see them light up and get more interested in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective too on older generations who have been traveling longer, and watching them. Some of them have just been repeatedly going to the same destinations, and that's just kind of their comfort zone. And so when you express interest in going to this beloved destination, like for my parents, it's Hawaii. They've been there several times. We wanted to take them to Hawaii last year, and when I started planning the trip, I had asked, you've been here several times. We went to the island of Oahu, and I said, you've been several times. What do you want to see? Or what do you think we shouldn't miss? And it was really fun to hear their input on, these are the don't miss things. We've got to see these. And then there were plenty of things where they said, well, we've seen it. You guys should go, but hey, leave us back at the hotel. We'll have a relaxing time. And we don't need to be there, but you guys should definitely see it. And I think that was a really good, really good time for us to be on our own as well on this big trip. So I think, there's so much value that can come from listening to everybody that's going to be there.
Right. Oh, completely. Yeah. Or leaving time in the schedule too. Like, depending on where you're going, sometimes a family member knows, they have outside friends or people, and they're like, hey, I want to make time to see this person. So allowing space in the schedule so people do, if they need time to rest, if they're maybe older and they're not as able to keep go all the time, or, little kids want to go back to the pool. I mean, that's just as exciting to them as like maybe spending hours walking around something with their eyes glazed over, or allowing people to make plans outside of the group for some downtime.
Yeah, I think that really helps. And you had mentioned earlier, and I didn't want to gloss over the budget thing too, because sometimes we're all sharing the cost of it, and it's just one of those things that we need to talk about openly about when we're planning this. What's it going to cost, and are we all on the same budget, whether we, and where are we? Because you don't want to plan an expensive trip when somebody in the family is not ready to handle that. So that all of those things, planning, get everybody involved and ask lots of questions, and very important part of family travel. I mean, that's true when you're traveling with anybody, but especially with family.
Yeah, especially. And I think we had also like, we talked a little bit about the why, the who, the focus, just the challenges. If there's, I know we kind of talked about the different ages, but also even known personal issues. Maybe you're going on a large trip and maybe some people have had some personality conflicts, or, get those kind of out in the open, or be aware of them ahead of time. Or
yeah, I mean, I know my mom and my daughter are a lot of like, so sometimes they can be combative because they're too much alike. And so, we talk about that, like, let's make sure that they both get their space. Let's make sure that, grandma has time on her own, like, so that they're not in each other's face all the time, because we've experienced that when we're not on a trip and what happens. And talking about that, or I know when my kids were little, especially when they were really young, my mom had a tendency to, try to tell me how to parent. And especially on a trip that would be frustrating. So lots of times I was like, no, I'm going to let them eat whatever they want, mom, like give them all of that ahead of time so that she's not frustrated. Like, why aren't you doing this? Or, how is that? So thinking about the known issues, not just children need, occupied time and, they run out of energy, or they, as far as looking at things, or older folks or mobility issues, but there's other challenges that come with putting us all in a box, a hotel room somewhere. And I think just talking openly about it, like anything else, it really helps if you think about it, right? Mandy, I know you had some stories about with your mom, right?
Yeah. I was just thinking, as my parents are getting older and just watching them, they have these habits, they have these routines that they like to stick to, and asking them to change that up is kind of a big ask sometimes, and even even in our own home, we have some habits and things that we do. And so if I ask my dad to get up really early and go somewhere without his coffee, he's not going to be very happy with me. He needs to kind of ease into it and just kind of go with the flow in the morning. And, and we all have some dietary needs. And so if we are rushed in the morning, that's a recipe for disaster. It usually means we forget to eat and then everybody's hangry.
Yeah.
And that doesn't go very well either. But, if we're more prepared with how everybody likes to run their day, and not to say that we cater to every little whim, right? But just to be mindful of it. Most of the time we can accommodate for what people need, and then it makes the trip go that much better because we've allowed everybody to have their time. My kids need downtime. If we just go all day, they are cranky and they just want to check out, and they want to go to the hotel pool, and to come to all of these places to just go to the hotel pool.
Right.
But we have time built in. We have, we allow for little spaces that they enjoy. We took them when we went to Paris a couple of years ago. We made sure that we found some really good parks. And that was amazing downtime because we were wandering the city on foot and we were exhausted. And these parks were a really good way to just stop and breathe and enjoy and relax. And we actually found out that our kids were more fluent in French than we knew they were. And just, watching them engage with the other kids in the parks and watching how other kids were engaging with their siblings and looking at, comparing our kids and their kids and thinking, oh, they're all the same.
Yeah.
They all fight the same. They all, the older sibling is managing the younger sibling.
Oh, yeah.
And, just to see these dynamics that are so similar, but we never would have experienced that if we didn't plan to have some downtime and to accommodate for what everybody's needs were. So,
Yeah. And I think everybody has to give a little, right? Grandparents are if you're going to do a multi-generation, grandparents have to tolerate okay, we're going to go to, something that's a little crazy for the kids or sit by the pool. And the kids are going to have to wander through the museum that grandfather wants to go see or whatever somebody wants to see in particular. As long as everybody knows that they get their turn, right? And they've all been planning, they feel it's so much easier, right? Like, oh, I can do this. This is interesting. Not everything is going to be for the grandparents and not everything is for the children, right? Like that's.
Yeah. We were surprised when we went to Oahu. We did the Pearl Harbor National Park, I guess, National Monument, whatever it is. And my youngest wasn't really in it. He was like, really, this sounds boring. I don't want to go. And at first he was kind of dragging his feet. We got the headsets and trying to get him to listen to the stories. But what really got him interested was my father telling him about his own stories in the military and his own experiences with things. And, kind of putting in a timeline. Well, this is where I was when this was happening. And, we were living here, we were doing these things. And then it slowly brought my youngest into this interest that now he wants to ask all kinds of questions every time we get together. So it's, surprising ways. I kind of knew that would happen because I knew my dad would be really excited about going, but I didn't know that my youngest would be sucked in. I knew my oldest was all about it, and he was he was by his side the whole time, like, Blue, tell me everything, Grandpa. I want to know all the stories. But, we kind of had to force it a little bit, but in the end, it was great. It was a great surprise.
Yeah. And, those stories that's what makes traveling with your family, both both generations, like that's what happens. It's really quite amazing to see how the connections, I've done trips with my kids or my mom and my brother, and you really connect and bond really fast. I mean, there's that joke that it's easy to relationship killers to go on a trip with your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, but it is true, because you just kind of, you're in that, you're stuck together, and it's like accelerates the whole relationship, and you spend so much more time together, and you discover things about each other because you're outside of your routine and outside of your comfort zone, and you have to flex, right? All of those things.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a beautiful thing about family travel, is those things that can happen. So I think we have a note here about preparing for the known challenges, and we talked a little bit about personality, but there's also challenges with limitations of mobility, and time and attention. And so you really do have to think, and you talked to Mandi about food. We need to think about every member of our party and make sure that the places we're going can accommodate them. I know Kathy told the story of lifting the wheelchair over the gate, right?
Yeah.
She was in Italy. And you're going to have to ask and, be prepared, because you can get yourself stuck somewhere, or someone could have that all worked out in the end, but you could have an unhappy situation if you don't plan ahead, and knowing what the limitations are of your family members, whether it's, a mobility issue or something else.
Yeah, when we were in Oahu, I knew that my mom was starting to have some struggles with walking long distances. And so we were planning to go to the Polynesian Cultural Center as like one of the first things that we did on that trip. And we called ahead. We actually went online and found that they rented scooters. We reserved it ahead of time, paid for it, took care of everything. And when we got there, or maybe about a week before, she said, I'm just not sure I'm going to be able to handle it. And I said, it's okay. We've got you a scooter. You could just see the relief in knowing that we had taken care of her. And, we'd considered that she had some needs, that she wasn't, that we didn't forget about her. And, we wanted to make sure that she had an enjoyable trip. And, in the rest of the trip, we looked for ways that we could make sure that she was taken care of in that way. We asked for a closer room in our hotel. We stayed at the Aulani resort, which was beautiful and blew my mind. And I want to just move there tomorrow. I would live there every day if I could. And, we just tried to make that more accessible for her. We knew that it was a huge resort and there's a lot of walking to enjoy everything there. And so we made sure that, we were only doing little small things, or we didn't ask for a time, we've got to be here at a certain time. She was allowed to just kind of wander as she wanted to. And it was amazing what happened for her. So the day that we went to Pearl Harbor, she decided she didn't really want to go. I told her we could rent a scooter and that would be fine. She said, I've been a few times. I don't need to go. Go with your dad. He'll tell you all kinds of stories. He really loves it. For me, it's fine. I'm kind of tired anyway. So she stayed back in our room. We actually had a 2-bedroom suite, and she read a book. She took a nap. She hung out on the patio and just enjoyed the view. She listened to the waves. She got to be alone on a vacation, which is something at her age, I don't know that she's ever really had the pleasure of doing that. And she said, we got home and I said, I'm so sorry we were gone so long. And she said, you don't even understand. I had the best day of my life. And,
That's a
it was amazing. So
yeah, I love that. And it's just a matter of listening when you're on the trip. I think that's another thing, when we didn't write it down, but I would say really just being flexible. Like that is exactly what happened, Mandi. You were flexible, didn't insist, oh, you have to go. We planned this. She wanted to stay back. And it was like, if that's going to make her happy.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And it did. It made her happier than she thought she was going to be. She was just trying to avoid the ho-hum if she didn't really care about going, having seen it before, right? And then she realized that she really enjoyed the time alone, which, you know, sometimes as a mom and a grandmother, I mean, it's probably hard to ask for. It is, you know, I know
Yeah.
from a mom, it's hard to say, I just want to be alone. Like, oh,
Yeah.
what does that say to your children? But I do.
Well, and I don't think she's ever advocated for herself like
Yeah.
that. I think
Yeah.
she's finally to a point now where she can say, hey, take your dad. I want to stay here by myself.
Right.
And
Yeah.
enjoy. And it was great to see that part of her to just be herself without anybody's expectations, and
Yeah.
nobody had demands on what she did with her time. It was great.
And Hawaii is a great place to sit on a patio and enjoy
Yeah.
the view. Like, who doesn't want to do that, right?
I think she even figured out how to order room service. And so she
Nice.
ordered some good treats, and
There you go.
she was happy.
Amazing. I was just going to check our comments. We got a few people watching, and I've seen a few notes. Yeah, there's just talking about friends and family and what happens when you take more than one person. And just, you know, just being on a trip with family. I mean, sometimes just being out to dinner with family, you know, Thanksgiving, it can be a challenge, but it can also be the biggest blessing, and it's so much fun. And that's why we continue to do it even when we have challenges.
Great.
So I hope we've given people some tips. We're at 6:30, right?
Yes, we're at 6:30, and I think we went through pretty much everything on our little list. And gave some great stories of why. Just, you know, go ahead and plan it and do it.
Yeah, and protect your boundary. Decide what you want to do, and tell everybody this is what we're doing, and, you know, protect that trip, and then plan another one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Keep going.
And if I could just add one piece, my father recently had some health problems, and my mom is going through some things as well. And it was quite a scare with his heart. He had to have some urgent surgery, and for a while we weren't sure what was going to happen. And he's doing well now as he's recovering from it. But you know, it made me look back, and I was so grateful that we took that trip with them recently, that we pushed through and made sure that was a priority, because it's memories that my kids will have forever. And, you know, it's not something you can recreate again. So I'm glad that we made the accommodations and that we made it happen no matter what.
Yeah. I know Cindy and I talk about that often too, that, you know, make it happen, you know, because those memories just last a lifetime, and they're far more valuable than any material item you could give. So, you know, maybe you can't devote a whole week, maybe it's a weekend, but, you know, just use your tips, be flexible, and take advantage if there's an opportunity to travel with your family and make something special.
Yeah. And all of them, parents, children, siblings, travel with all of them. Find ways to, you know, coop up and where they want to go. The world's a big place, lots of places to go. So thanks, Mandi, for joining us tonight with our family travel talk. This has been really great, and we've got some great comments. I'm going to go in there and comment back, but we don't have time to talk too much about those. So we'll come back and see you guys next week, Wednesday. I don't know what the topic is. Do you know what it is? I think I'm doing solo travel. Is that what it is?
No, solo travel is June 8th. I'm doing how to choose a travel camera, and then you're going to do the world's smallest. You're going to do packing hacks, like your smallest.
No, you have the schedule. Yes. Okay. So the camera thing is next week, right?
Next Wednesday.
How to pick your travel